Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us and watching this video today as part of our Employability Week for Philosophy finalists. I hope you've enjoyed the event so far. So starting with the welcome talk and the York Strengths Discovery with Dr. Fiora Salis. You can watch these, you can re-watch these will be available for you. And today we have the final two sessions of our Employability Week. We're very excited today to have James Darley with us, who's the CEO of Transform Society. So Transform Society is a brilliant organisation which deals with public sector recruitment. So you may have heard of the leadership development schemes Teach First, Unlocked, Police Now, Think Ahead, and Frontline. So these are in the police, social work, working as a prison officer or as a teacher. And these really are at the forefront of social change and development in our society. And James Darley has been working in recruitment for more than 20 years, has a wealth of experience, and is one of the leading figures in the sector. So we are so excited to hear his insights on the state of the graduate nation, so insights into the graduate labour market. So I will hand over to James now, and welcome, James, and thank you for being here today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Claire, and welcome to you all, and thank you for taking the time to watch this in your own time. I just thought it'd be useful to give you an understanding of the graduate market. It is a tough time, the global pandemic. I thought it's useful that you actually hear the facts and figures and know exactly what's happening in the graduate market, so you can then decide what you want to do once you graduate. So you heard, my name's James Darley. Been in graduate recruitment a long time, and that basically means you come across someone like me when you're looking for that graduate job, and it's my responsibility to find out, have you got the transferable skills that I know my employer needs for you to be successful in that graduate job. So I've been doing this a very, very long time, and I love doing sessions like this where I just share with you what is happening in the market so that you're fully informed, so you can then make the right decisions about what you do after university. So here we go. This is what we're going to cover. I'll tell you a little bit about the marketplace and also public sector jobs. I'll tell you about my 5 Alliance members. So we actually have 3,000 jobs across my 5 Alliance members. I was at Teach First for 15 years and I ran their graduate recruitment for that time, recruiting over 10,000 graduates for Teach First, and I then helped the other 4 programs set up, and I've sat on their boards and been a part of them since their evolution. So I'm hugely passionate about inspiring, hopefully, some of you to think about public sector at some point in your career. I'll then cover things like work experience, the latest data, which I literally pulled for you yesterday, and then I think Claire's got some questions that she's going to ask at the end. Right, so let's kind of dive in. The graduate market in 2021. Well, look, pre-COVID, things were pretty stable. What you're seeing here is if you add up the top 100 firms that recruit graduates, and they recruit usually around 23,000 graduates, what has been happening over a kind of 10-year period. And as you can see, the previous recession back in 08, it dropped and it started to then happily recover. There was a slight dip post the Brexit vote, but things were looking pretty stable. But I'm afraid post-COVID, we're definitely looking at a depressed market, and you'll see kind of later, it's going to be a depressed market for a couple of years. I don't think we're going to see things recovering to pre-COVID levels until 2023, I'm afraid. But that stability has actually been very dependent on certain sectors. So what you're seeing here is over the last 10 years, what are the sectors that have grown and what are the sectors that have actually declined? And I say this shouldn't necessarily influence where you want to work, but what I'm hoping to do is make sure that you've got all the facts and figures behind you, so you know what's been happening in the market, so that when you make that application, when you apply to that particular sector and employer that you want, you know what's been going on. So you know how competitive it is, you know what they're looking for, and you know how to present yourself in the right way so that you get through their selection process. So as you can see here, things like public sector, technology, consulting a bit, but if you look in a sec, they hardly hire any. So it's a 69% growth, but that's actually tiny in terms of numbers. It's been public sector that has been propping up that stability for a number of years, and particularly my 5 Alliance members. 3,000 jobs, they didn't exist before these programs existed, so they're very much have been part of that stability. But if you're here wanting investment banking, wanting oil and energy, media, armed forces, actually these are sectors that have been in a long-term decline, so it's worth just bearing that in mind. Now, what happened when COVID hit in 2020? Well, most top recruiters kind of halted recruitment. Luckily, because it was March time, nearly everything had been done. So you can see here that most had finished their recruitment. They just didn't recruit those extra positions, those extra hard to fill regions and particular technical expertise. So the reality was the market went down by about 11% in 2020. If you look at what sectors then, well, nearly all of the sectors were hit, but some were hit even harder than others. And as you can see at the bottom right, and I should have said all of these slides, obviously you're seeing on the presentation, but they'll be provided to you as well in case you want to kind of not have to pause the video all the time. I'll make sure you've got all the slides afterwards. So please don't worry if I whiz through a particular slide. There were certain sectors which were hardest hit, and I suppose it's not really that difficult to understand why. Engineering, industrial, consulting, accounting, all the things that require businesses to be booming were kind of down. Other sectors not quite as bad. But let's then look at kind of 2021. So we've looked at the depressing picture of what happened in 2020. What do we think is going to be happening in 2021? Well, here again are all of the vacancies that the top 100 firms are recruiting for in 2021. And you can see there are some sectors, 5 of them, that are predicting growth, but about a quarter are hoping to increase their vacancies, but 2/5 do expect to reduce their numbers. And I'll stay on this slide a little bit longer. This is actually where the jobs are and how many of them are there. So public sector, with my Alliance members representing 3,000 of that 5,257 at the top, but thank goodness PwC, EY, KPMG, Deloitte, those fantastic organisations, still looking quite strong, not as high as they have been, but still pretty strong. But there are other areas. And if you look at the bottom end, there are some interesting ones here. Everybody's interested in consulting. It's kind of like one of the most popular careers to go into. But look, there's actually only 215 vacancies. Again, not to scare you, but to make you fully aware that there's only 215. So if I want to be one of those 215, what do I need to do? How can I prepare? How can I make sure that I'm one of those 215? That's what I'm trying to do today, is to make you aware of the facts and then help you with your thinking and getting yourself ready for applications. So that's the reality of the 20-odd thousand positions that are going to be available this year. Sadly, at this point in February, most of them are now closed. There are some employers that are still open. Certainly one of my 5 Teach First is still open for certain roles, certain subjects in certain locations. But most have been absolutely inundated with applications this year and are closed. So it's worth just trying to find out, if you haven't got yourself a position yet and you know what sector and what company you want to work for, please do go and have a look at them now just to see whether they're still open or not. But I wanted to give you, that's the micro picture of exactly how many positions there are. I wanted to go a bit macro for a second and just give you a kind of understanding of, what is the market out there. Well, the reality is about 540,000 students start university and 400,000 finish. Okay, so you've got to think there is a big funnel here. The 400,000, if it's going down to those 20,000 jobs, if it's going down to those 215 jobs in consultancy, how am I going to make sure I'm one of those 215 out of that enormous figure of 400,000 that are leaving university? In terms of degree results, you can see here 76% getting a first or 2-1. Is life over if you get a 2-2? Of course it's not, but you do need to remember that you are in the bottom quartile in terms of academic results. Some programs require a 2-1, a lot don't. Again, it's worth doing your research to find out which employers don't. But this, again, is just so that you're aware, oh, I'm on for a first, fantastic. But remember, a quarter of all of those 400,000, or 28%, are coming out with a first as well. So again, just to make you aware of kind of what's happening. Oh, sorry, flipped past that one. And that's been a kind of gradual increase. So you can kind of see here over a kind of larger period, the percentages getting a first or 2-1. Obviously, I'm not making any judgment on on quality of degrees, but there has been a trend. Certainly, I've been in graduate recruitment since before '98, and we have seen this kind of upward trend in terms of those getting a first or 2-1. Also, we're hugely respectful, and it's hugely depressing. We know that your amount of debts is also rising very steadily, particularly with your student fees and all the other things that come into it. And this is what finalists plan to do after university. I think we will see quite a different pie chart when this comes out in March for 2021. This is already quite different to the trends that I'm used to over a long period, particularly that 27% intending to do a postgraduate course. There's been a massive, and I'm sure a number of you might be thinking about, do you do a postgrad course after you graduate to kind of cover yourself over that particular period? So we've definitely seen a kind of growth, 27%, but not everybody hits the job market. And I think, again, there's this perception that everybody goes and gets a job straight after. Look, 11% used to go traveling. Fantastic thing to do if you can, but obviously that's not going to be happening either this year. So some do have a job, some look for a job, some want to set up their own business. It's worth starting to think, which bucket do you fit in? Are you expecting to start a job, or are you thinking about doing postgrad, or are you in that no definite plans chunk at the moment? Just so you can then start to work out what you need to do over the coming months. Obviously, focus on your degree. You've only got a few weeks and months left, so it's worth just making sure you nail that. But then it's worth working out which bit of this pie chart am I in, and what's my next step going to be to help me towards my future career. But there is a myth out there that kind of getting that first job is it. It's the Willy Wonka. You found the golden ticket and you can relax and life is over. The reality is graduates are only spending 2.5 years in their first job. So if you haven't got a job, please do not worry. There is an enormous market out there, what I call first bouncers. So those that kind of have done something and then bounce to the next opportunity, young professionals and career changers. They're all at different stages in terms of how long since you've left university. But there is a massive market out there for you if you haven't got a position and you're looking after university. So please don't worry. And for those of you that have got that job, well done. But have this in mind, quite a lot of you will decide you don't enjoy what you've done. And you'll actually be thinking then about moving on after a couple of years. And this is when students look for jobs now. So I know you're all final years, but maybe some other students might watch this kind of from earlier years. This was totally different. God, in my day, it was like 99% looked in their final year or later. There's been a massive change. Look at this, nearly a quarter before university. So, literally when you're kind of 18 and you haven't even gone to uni, they're starting to think about their careers. So it's definitely a changing market and you should start thinking about careers. And if you haven't, please start doing it now. Because look, this is the competition you're against. First years, 50% have started researching and a fifth have got an internship. In their penultimate year, 80% were looking, with 2/5 having done some work experience. And look, 60% of finalists have made a job application before the end of Feb. So if you're in the bucket that's done all of that, fantastic. If you're in the bucket that isn't, you might want to start thinking about this now and starting to think, so say get your degree. So it's a balance for me. You've only got a few weeks left. So it's that balance between making sure you get your good degree, but also starting to think about what you want to do. In terms of government and how they kind of log it, this was the last time we saw Delhi, the destination of leavers in higher education. There's a new system coming, which has got its kind of its issues at the start, but this is kind of what government look at, and they see that 3/4 of graduates are in work. That just gives you an idea. And here, if you actually delve into that, based on kind of subjects, and obviously I'm immediately going to your one, which is philosophy here, in terms of the kind of 40%, these are the percentages that are in work. Obviously, this doesn't show you whether they've gone on to further study and what they're doing after that, but it just gives you an idea. Okay, well, if not as many philosophers are in work compared to kind of medicine and veterinary, do I want to be in work? If I do, what do I need to do to get myself ready? What do I need to do to make sure that my transferable skills are being built so that I can get the job that I particularly want? Here's also, just I think this stuff is interesting, it gives you an idea based on your degree subject, what the kind of average pay is 5 years after your degree. Again, you can absolutely buck this trend, but I just think it's interesting to kind of show you very kind of roughly what's going on there. So you can see yourselves in the top right kind of corner of that. I say, not to judge or anything, is to give you an idea of the facts of what has been happening in terms of people's pay 5 years on based on their degree. And if you were wondering what happens then with the 400,000 that leave university, well, look, about 70,000 head towards doctors, nurses, teachers and vets, and that's why they were so employed, as you saw in those previous slides. About 30 to 35,000 go on to official graduate schemes, of which the top 100 that I've been talking about a lot today represents about 20,000 or something like that. Now, this is the area that I'm afraid is going to be a real trouble. Usually a quarter of all graduates head into the SME market, the small and medium-sized employers. So those local to York, if you're staying, or those local to wherever you're going to go back to after university, where students start to kind of then move their way up. And that's the area, because of COVID, that is going to be utterly decimated. So whilst the graduate market is only down 10 to 15%, depending on who you listen to, I'm really worried that the area where roughly a quarter of graduates go is unfortunately not going to be there for you. So it's really wise to start thinking now about what you're going to do if that's not an option for you. This shows you where graduates did go. So you saw it based on things like degree. These are the kind of sectors and chunks of employment that class of 2017 went into. So unsurprisingly at the top, health professionals, because you saw there, you had kind of 70,000 roughly heading towards there. But what's interesting for me is on this left-hand side, there are lots of these areas that are shut now. So things like retail, catering, waiting, arts, design, media. There are lots of sectors here on the left-hand side that sadly, due to the pandemic, are closed at the moment. I personally don't think that the world, that the UK is going to start moving really until the autumn, heading towards Christmas. So, a lot of these sectors are not going to recover once you've graduated. So it's worth thinking now, okay, well, what sectors will be there? What work can I do? Do I go on to do a master's? So on, so on. And here's the list of the top 100. So I'm not going to go into that much detail of it, but I hope you can come back to this slide and have a look at it, because there'll be lots of companies in here that you may or may not have heard of, and it's worth, like Newton. Who are Newton? Well, actually a fantastic consultancy firm. There might be lots of names in here, and it's just quite a useful little list to come and have a little look at. Normally you could go to your career service and pick up the red and black book. There is a digital version now, which I'm sure your career service has a link to on the site, but it's worth having a look just to kind of get a feel for all of these kind of brands. And you can see here crazy application numbers. So civil service 65,000, PwC 100,000. It has kind of gone a bit bonkers. But if I go into public sector now, and the area that I'm hugely passionate about, if you haven't thought about it, public sector, as you can see in the bottom left there, nearly half of all students this year say they're going to apply to public sector. Why? Well, here on the right-hand side, there are some reasons. So if you're reading this list and yes, you want to make a difference and you want long-term career prospects and you want good quality training and development and positive work-life balance, then it's quite possible the public sector is for you. If you're looking at the bottom and going, I want a high starting salary and I want to work overseas, then maybe public sector is not right for you. But on the left, those are the top 10 brands, and I'm delighted that a couple of my Alliance members are in there. And this is my Alliance, the Transform Society Alliance. Who are we? We are basically just an alliance of social change programs, each of them working in a different area of social justice. We're recruiting about 3,000, and here are the programs. So we've got Frontline that recruit children's social workers, Teach First, look for teachers, Unlocked, prison officers, Police Now, policing, and Think Ahead, adult mental health social workers. And these are the 5 programs that are recruiting 3,000, and I've been lucky enough and blessed enough to be a part of for about 15 years now. And we represent just under 60% of the graduate hires in the public sector. And this is what I'm trying to do, is inspire some of you towards public service. The world has very much changed in the time that I've been in graduate recruitment, and you are graduating into a portfolio career world. What does that mean? It means that it's very likely, some of you, yes, you'll be in medicine, you might be doctors, vets and engineers in certain particular areas, and that, yes, you usually do stay. But the mass majority, and particularly, I would have thought a lot of you guys, you'll be having a portfolio career. What is that? It means that they say that you'll be doing 13 different careers in your life. So you may work in a company for a while, you may take time off and go traveling, you may have a family, you may work in public sector, be a teacher, you may set up your own business. There'll be lots of different chunks of careers that will build up your entire portfolio career. And having recruited a lot of graduates over a long period of time, the difference you can make in public sector and the need in public sector, so that balance between what you give back to others and what you get yourselves, is phenomenal in public sector. So I just very much hope that you will consider public sector as one of your portfolio careers, because you really can make a massive difference. So if I touch now on aspirations and motivations, I know it can be really hard, particularly yourselves, maybe philosophy graduates, understanding what you do next. And I like to say, think about it as a head and heart decision. There'll be lots of head decisions that you need to make. I need a certain amount of money. I need to be in a certain region. I want to be using my degree. But there must be some heart in there. A bit depressing, but you're probably going to have to work until you're 70. I still love getting up every day. I love what I do. If you have a small bit of that heart in there, I promise you your careers will be a lot more fulfilling. So think of that balance between the head and the heart. On the right-hand side, what you're seeing here is what other graduates, and basically all of this research is 20% of final year students at the top 30 universities, of which York is included. So it's your peers and also peers across the other top universities. Here's just a list of things that students believe they want in their first job. So have a look at this and see if it's the sorts of things that you want, because that will then help you identify the sector and then the career and the employer that you want. So do you want to give something back? Do you want genuine responsibility? Do you want to work with customers and clients? Do you want to be kind of working with senior managers? What is it that's going to really push your buttons? And then start to identify the sector, start to identify the employers. Unsurprisingly, this is kind of very fresh data that's just come in. The pandemic has changed sectors that are appealing to graduates. And look, unsurprisingly, 5 sectors now. Technology, we're all using a hell of a lot more. Science and research, thank goodness for Pfizer and AstraZeneca and everyone else that's going to be saving us with the vaccine over the coming months and years. We've seen what charities are doing, what public sector is doing. We've seen the importance of the media and getting rid of fake news. It's unsurprising then that these 5 sectors have become a lot more popular. But also views on graduate jobs have actually changed a little bit. So look at these sorts of things we're seeing here. Actually, now I'm looking for an employer that's going to give me long-term security. I want to give something back. I want professional qualifications. I don't want to work for an employer that's been hard hit by the crisis. So have a look at these sorts of lists and start to think to yourself, right, which ones push my buttons, tick my box, so that you can then start to think the sector and then the employer that you're going to want. Right, now work experience. Oh my goodness, this is an area which obviously has been fairly decimated. Pre-COVID, if you hadn't done work experience, you pretty much had no chance or very little chance of getting a job offer with a top graduate employer. A third of those top 100 jobs had actually gone to students that had done an internship with that employer. And you can see here, 4/5 has done some kind of work experience, and with kind of placement years and all of this, actually average was about 6 months. And there were certain sectors where if you hadn't done an internship with that employer, forget it. So if you remember consulting, there was only 215 jobs. Well, look, a third of those had actually gone before you hit the final year because they'd gone to students that had done an internship with those employers. So it's important to kind of know these sorts of things. Now, it is slightly different now because of COVID. It was a growing market, and it was growing. There'd been a little dip, as you saw there, in Brexit times. But I'm afraid now it has been decimated, and it's pretty much virtual. So most big employers kept their internship programs last summer, but they made them virtual. I'm hearing they're going to be virtual this year as well. There may be the odd employer that's able to do something, but as of today, February, no businesses are open, the door is still shut. It's still very, very likely that they'll be virtual. But the benefit to that is they can offer it to a lot more. So if you do have a particular employer or sector in mind, you must be looking at their websites now to start to see what the application processes are for their internship programs and virtual internships and experiences. All because you must show the transferable skills that the employer is looking for. So this whole presentation, I've been telling you, think about the sector, think about the employer. Why? Because once you can identify the transferable skills that that employer looks for, then you can start to work out, am I right for that employer? and you can get yourself ready to apply to that employer. So what you're seeing here is a list of kind of popular graduate transferable skills. Now, I'm not going to bore you. Some use competencies, some use strengths, some use attributes. They do all mean different things, but I'm going to use this catch-all term of transferable skills because you won't really care kind of what the subtleties are between all of the differences. Here are some of them, just to kind of whet your appetite. So you should look at these sorts of lists and go, okay, resilience. And I always say, rank yourself. So just do a simple little exercise of ranking yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is dreadful, 10 is utterly amazing. If any of you put 10, scrap it out, start again, you're not a 10. I would imagine you're kind of 4s to 6s and 7s, something like that. But start to then identify which ones do you need to kind of build on. Problem solving, critical thinking and analysis. I mean, I know you guys should be utterly incredible at that. So there are lots of positives that you should take from what you've got from your course, but there's probably lots of things that you've also done in volunteering or work experience or key worker work that you might be doing that you can show. Because when you start applying, it is tough. So sorry to be again another depressing statistic, 98% of graduate applications get rejected. 98%. How wrong is that? And that's why I hate that graduate recruitment that I joined 25 years ago has become graduate recruitment has become graduate rejection. So I don't want you to be in one of those 98%. So you must understand what is happening in screening and what is going to then happen at the assessment centre that you attend, because they're all happening virtually. So assessment centres are still going. All of my Alliance members are running them 3 or 4 days a week at the moment. But screening will happen first, and it could well be that a lot of it is going to be done on your phone. So gamification is here. You could be playing lots of games where balloons grow, and it's a risk exercise to see how risk averse you are. Balloon grows, the points grow. Do you tap the balloon before it explodes? Because if it explodes, you lose all the points. But if you tap it too early, you get a low score. It could be a sequence that you have to follow, of flashing squares. It could be cards and Angry Birds kind of activity, where do you go back to the same place, or do you learn from your mistake and actually change kind of where you're doing it? So you must find out what is the screening process that I'm going to go through for the employer that I'm interested in. And then when it comes to an assessment centre, what is going to happen to me? And your career service have got lots of activity that they can help with. You've got the York Strengths, and you've got lots of other activity that they offer. So please look at your career service and get their help. I also run lots of sessions as well. And if there's interest, I'm delighted to do specific stuff with all of you guys. I do mock assessment centres and role plays and all of these sorts of things if it's helpful. But make sure you find out what the screening and then what the assessing is that you're going to go through. Here's last year's data, but it has exploded this year. So roughly, students were making 10 and a bit applications. And you can see on the right-hand side, those areas of most interest. And it's fascinating for me that consulting is always the most popular. And it has one of the lowest number of jobs at 215. 400,000 of you, 215 jobs. How are you going to get one of those 215 if you want it, when a third of those jobs went to students that had done an internship with those consulting firms? So not to put you off it, but to make you aware of the facts so you can then get yourself ready. Last few things then from me. The latest data that's been coming out is that the top 100 employers are going to be down around 15% from where they were last year. So that's a drop, but it's not out. So it's not as if the top employers are not recruiting. They are, but it's looking like it's going to be about 15% down. Massive growth and strength of public sector. Starting salaries are going to be unchanged at 30k, but applications, I'm afraid, are at record levels. Most have closed their applications early, except for those hard to reach roles or technical roles that require specific skills and experience. As I've already said, the 2021 summer internship is likely to be severely affected. I'm not hearing very much. And as I said before, it's going to be that SME market that's going to be really key before things recover. The Institute of Student Employers, they represent over 180 companies, came out with a survey late November. They showed that there were roughly 60 applicants per vacancy, and that 30% of their members were going to be reducing their graduate hires. You can see in the top right the picture of the kind of last economic recession with here the pandemic. So it's not as bad, but it's definitely a dip, and we just don't know how long I think it's going to be 2023, but we just don't know yet how long until we start seeing it going into the kind of positive greens. And you can see in the bottom right, the sectors that have been particularly, unsurprisingly, look, retail, FMCG, built environment. These are the areas which obviously are closed at the moment and won't be recruiting many graduates. So the market is suppressed, I'm afraid, 12 to 15%, but it's not as bad as it could have been. But there are some sectors that are bad. We don't know whether things are going to increase. I think if businesses open and the vaccination program goes well, you know, we're hearing lots of things of, you know, lots of different groups being done by the summer. Let's just wait and see. So keep an eye on things because things will recover as soon as businesses open. They'll be needing people and they'll be needing to recruit. PwC, they came out with an economic update, and I think it's quite spot on. The middle of 2023 until we get to pre-lockdown levels. So last couple of slides from me before I can see whether Claire's got any questions that might kind of help you or be interesting. A few tips from me. Please make sure you're on LinkedIn. If you haven't created your profile yet, you really should. It's the perfect time to be following companies, reading materials, connecting with alumni from York who are working for the companies that you want to work for, so that you can build your knowledge and build your understanding of an organization. Things like Twitter and Instagram, obviously great at the moment with last minute decisions. We're closing tomorrow or we're opening up for this region. So follow companies and individuals. And you really should be using social media to be looking for your jobs. Yes, they can look you up. So I always do that bit of advice. Don't post anything online, whether it's Instagram or Snapchat or anything, or anywhere where you're around. Don't put anything up there that you wouldn't want your mum to see. But just, you know, think about things. Employers don't, I mean, in other countries, it's a lot more prevalent. So in the US and other countries, they really do look at your social media profile. Here, companies don't, but it's still worth just, you know, considering what you're posting and what you're not. So last few tips from me, and hopefully that's been useful in this whirlwind 30 minutes that we've had together. First of all, don't panic. I've been in this sector for 25 years and I've seen many of those negatives that you saw in the slide just a minute ago of downturns in the economy. It always recovers, it will recover. And in the portfolio career world now that we're living in, it really doesn't matter. But obviously you need to be thinking about what you do when you leave in the summer and what you're going to do for next year or possibly a couple of years until possibly that Willy Wonka job is available for you. And my advice is do as much extracurricular as you can, where you can, and obviously being safe, but do your research. Think about your sectors and the employers that you want and do your research. There's no excuse now. Everything is online. Lots of big employers have now put all of their internship programs, open access materials on their website. So it's definitely worth looking at competitors to the company that you might want to work for, so to see what they've got online so that you can learn from them. Really, really important that you do and attend as much as you possibly can and do as much as you possibly can. And also volunteer, stay safe, but our communities need you now. You know, the amount of CVs and interviews that I do, and I'm hearing that, you know, they've set up, you know, this website to build confidence in young girls at this time when they're not at school, through to delivering medications every morning to the vulnerable that can't get out, to reading to over the phone to those in care homes, to mentoring kids in schools. The educational gap has got even bigger during COVID. There is so much that you could do in your community if you haven't got yourself work and you're thinking about what should you do. So now more than ever, we need the next generation to step up and help and support. So hopefully that's been helpful. I'm utterly delighted now, if you have any other questions, delighted to kind of take them.
Thank you so much, James. That was fascinating. Loads of really interesting data there and very up-to-date and relevant information. And, you know, obviously it's a tough time, so it's hard to hear some of the information, but I think it's better to go into these things with your eyes open and try to put yourself in the best position to find the right opportunity for you and make the right career decisions. I have a few questions. So this has been our employability week in philosophy, and we've talked a lot about the skills that a philosophy graduate possesses, which include things like some of which you had on the slide previously. So critical and analytical thinking, creative problem solving, grasping complex ideas,
Yep.
Research, oral and written communication, constructing and defending a coherent argument. So I just wondered, do you often get applications from philosophy students for your leadership programs, and do you welcome students from this degree discipline?
We very much do, and if you haven't thought about public sector and My Alliance members, you absolutely should. But I can also say 86% of graduate roles do not require a specific degree to the particular role. So you actually should be thinking about all of the top employers. So a philosophy background is utterly brilliant. It's then about your transferable skills based on the employer that you're looking for. So yes, we have hired lots of philosophy graduates. We love them, and you should be applying, and you should have the confidence to apply to my members, but also all of the big top graduate employers.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So another question, pre-COVID, the use of technology in the public sector was adopted in very different ways and at a different pace in different areas of the sector. How has COVID impacted on the way teachers, the police, social workers and prison officers use technology, and how important do you think digital skills are for students looking to apply to transform society leadership programs?
So you're absolutely right. Things have had to evolve. Particularly, for teachers doing the online learning. For some of the other programs that I represent, police officers are still on the street, prison officers are still on the ward, on the wings, and social workers are doing a mix of kind of video calls as well as kind of face-to-face calls. So I would kind of say I would be utterly amazed if all of you, with the way that you have been living and that you have been growing up in this kind of digital world, aren't to the level that kind of is required. You live on social media, you're all digital natives, you are much more prolific use of technology than someone like me. So I wouldn't have thought you're going to have any problems, but certainly it's probably worth taking into account that you will need to. So if you're not as comfortable on cameras like here, hopefully you've noticed today I've tried to kind of stare at my actual camera as much as I possibly can so that it feels like I'm interacting you, not looking at the screen which has got all of my slides, or looking at notes that might be stuck on a wall. So my kind of tips are, you are a digital native, but think about kind of digital, particularly when you're applying. These things matter. When you go to an assessment center and you're having an interview, the more that you can, like I'm trying to do it now just to kind of show you, the more that you can actually try and give eye contact to the camera. So think about these things. If your camera's over here, then that's not going to be the best interview that you can do, because you're not interacting with, I'm not interacting with Claire, and I don't know, she could be doing anything now. So you want to try and make sure that you have a setup and you've thought about these sorts of things in a kind of digital context.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that. So as its heart transforms society seeks to tackle social inequality, and certainly there are significant issues facing society at the moment, for example, Black Lives Matter movement,
Absolutely.
A global recession, as you've been talking about, climate change and Brexit. So how does Transform Society respond to current events, and does it affect your vision and your recruitment processes? And obviously you've already talked kind of about the recession aspect, so maybe it's more around equality and diversity in terms of the question.
So I'll answer it in two ways. So Transform Society, the Alliance, it makes me even more passionate about what I've been doing over the last 15 years. The reason I left Teach First is because I could see that even if Teach First hit its goals of educational equity, society would still be unfair for the most disadvantaged. I could see that I'd been able to create a brand that was respected and loved by a lot of graduates, doing something that they never thought of doing, teaching in a challenging school. And guess what? It's actually gone now into 4 other areas: policing, prison officers, and 2 in social care. And I'm actually talking to number 10 at the moment, potentially about a program in the care sector. So I think there is a real opportunity, because I passionately believe if the leaders of the future have done one of my programs, then society will get fairer for the most disadvantaged. Imagine if we had a head of education Secretary of State for Education that had been a teacher. Imagine if we have a Prime Minister that's been a police officer or been a social worker or a mental health worker. I passionately believe that the leaders of the future are you, and I think the best way that you can build your skills and actually give back, which is so important, is doing public service. So either my programs or other routes into public service are fantastic. In terms of my individual programs, I think it's brought them renewed respect. I think we've I know we're not clapping anymore, but just society, I think, is respecting police and prison officers and teachers. I mean, God, look, I've got 2 children that I'm homeschooling, so my word, do I respect teachers more now than I ever have done before because I'm homeschooling. There is a lot more respect for these positions, and I think that is only going to get kind of stronger. So I think the demand and the need for fantastic public servants, but critically, we need the leadership there. So we need you to come in and then stay and be the leaders of the future, because that's the only way that we're going to change things, when the leaders of this country actually have a different view, like I do, of how things should be run and how things should be distributed.
Excellent. Thank you. That's a great answer. Okay. So I wonder, I see students, every day in appointments, and I hear a lot of students who are considering further study at the moment. I wonder, what's your view of a master's level qualification? Would this enhance an application for one of your programs?
So you can't guarantee that it's going to enhance it. I think there's obviously financial pressures that will come into your decision as well. But I definitely think, whilst you're waiting for the Willy Wonka job that you want, you must do something. So doing a master's is a fantastic response to the current pandemic and the graduate market. So yes, if finances are okay and you've still got passion and drive in a particular subject, then I would argue that it's something good to do. Will it guarantee you a job interview, guarantee you a financial differentiator with someone that hasn't done it? Probably not, because if you remember, I'm recruiting against transferable skills. Now, if that master's helps you build the transferable skill that you're not so strong at, yay, then that's another good thing. But don't just think it's by doing the master's and completing it that is necessarily going to give you the edge. That'll give you part of the edge potentially, but you must be thinking about the transferable skills that the employer you want to work for wants. Rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, and if through the year of doing your master's you also build resilience, problem solving and leadership, then you are going to be in a much stronger position for the Willy Wonka job that you want.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, and that I think that's really right. And just to add to that, if you are thinking of doing a master's, remember that if you're interested in graduate schemes, you should really be starting to apply in your autumn term.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And to really plan that out, because it can be a very busy year. So to try and schedule in when you can write some good quality applications, so you don't sort of find yourself in the same position as in the end of your BA, sort of, if you've been running late for graduate schemes. So yeah, get in there early. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so across your 5 different leadership schemes, James, there are different criteria obviously related to each program. But thinking across these 5 programs, are there particular qualities or experiences that make an application form stand out to you? That you've talked a lot today about the competitiveness of the process. So what is it that actually makes an application stand out?
So without a doubt, passion and drive and motivation for the role. For my 5 members particularly, I want to see that you actually like children and you have passion for wanting to address educational inequity. If it's unlocked, I need to know that you are very passionate about rehabilitation. That's the vision of that charity, is to kind of actually break the cycles of reoffending, which are crippling this country. So for me, I think the number one thing is definitely going to be drive and passion and motivation. You've got to want to be a police officer. You've got to want to be a social worker. So that comes first. And then I think it's about your rapport and the way that you can build relationships with people quickly. All of my 5 Alliance members require you to deal with the most vulnerable, those at their worst or their most scared or their most vulnerable state. And you desperately do need to be someone that can show that humility, that empathy, that emotional intelligence, whatever it may be. So, all of them state their competencies on their website. But I would argue, if you were saying to me, what are the two things that make you stand out? Passion and drive for what we're trying to do, and emotional intelligence would be key.
Fantastic. That's very inspiring, I think, and certainly in terms of what students are looking for. So it's a very high percentage of students who look to make a difference, and you can really see that you do get that through
most definitely
your leadership programs.
And there you are. If you're interested, here's my, very welcome to contact me. I have a unique relationship with York, where you get all of my help and support. So if I can be helpful in the future, there is my contact detail. You can contact me individually or through Claire or through the department, whatever it may be. But I've been working closely with York for a number of years, and know I will for many more to come. So you are more than happy to do anything I can do to help.
Thank you so much, James. So I think we'll need to finish up now. Do you have any final top tips for final year students entering the graduate labour market? Obviously, you've given us a huge amount of information and advice, but if there's anything that you'd like to say,
I think it's just don't worry. Don't worry. Be confident in yourself and your abilities, but just start thinking about what you want to do and what your journey is going to be to get you there. So things are going to get better. Everything is going to recover. We're all going to get the vaccination in our arm at some point in the not too distant future. So things are going to get better. So don't worry, it will get better, and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. And I'll make sure I send you the slides so everyone watching can have them as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And
absolute pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye. Okay.